All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat,
And I'm Eric.
and today, as you can probably tell, we're going to be doing a Dragon Quest XI discussion, spoilers, total spoilers. But before we get into that, we're going to talk a little bit about what we've been playing over the past week, and then we're just going to jump right into the spoiler discussion. We're going to be talking about the main game, talking about the post-game content, and just pretty much anything you can think about with the game will be at risk for spoilers. But if you don't want to listen to that, you can listen to this first part where we're just going to talk a little bit about what we've been playing this week. Eric, what have you been playing this week?
Well, I finished the Smash Bros. World of Light, and I clocked in over 30 hours on that until I finally finished it. I got all
Boom.
the spirits on there, and it was great. And anyone who has Smash Bros., I recommend going through it. Um, and it's as simple as that. There's not much to talk about. There isn't really much story to it. So,
Yeah.
but going through it is really fun. But what RPG wise, what I have been playing is I bought the Sega Ages Phantasy Star 1 on the Switch.
Me too.
And my opinion overall, it's great. I think it's a really well made port. In that it's still Phantasy Star 1, the Sega Master System game.
Yeah.
But all the features that come with it are very nice. You have a lot of screen modes. Like you can do 4x3, normal fit. You can even stretch it out if you want to. I don't really recommend that, but it is an option there for you if you don't mind that. And they have cool things like the CRT mode, where it looks like you're playing it on the CRT TV.
Yeah.
Not only that, the biggest thing with it is that there's a UI mode you can put on that gives you access to a mini map for dungeons and a top right corner UI for your party members, so you don't have to keep constantly checking it in the menu. Which is, I mean, they're very nice additions. Like I've said actually on the show before that the biggest problem I had with Fantasy Star 1 was even if you had a compass, the dungeons were all looked alike, and there's nothing unique about it to like. So you had to like before the times of the internet, you kind of had to like take a piece of paper and you had to write like how the dungeon structure was laid out so you remember where you are.
Yeah, it was it was kind of wild west of gaming. Like there wasn't pre-established things you should do. Like, I don't know, include a map.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's definitely a product of its time. Uh, and I think with this version, I think it's definitely more accessible to people who want to not deal with that type of stuff, but still wants to see the game because the game's really good. I know I've been kind of hard on it before, but playing through it again, it just reminded me of how great it actually is. And I
Yeah.
actually want to play through 2, 3, and 4 also if I can make the time for it.
hmm
But I mean, I highly recommend it for anyone who likes the classics, and it even has an arranged mode where it brings even more accessibility. Like, the game is still challenging, but the arranged mode offers less encounters or less encounter rate, and it offers more EXP and money
Yeah.
per fight.
So
So that's a major difference.
yeah, I mean, I picked the game up also in addition to the Sega Classics compilation, and just total like everything you just said, I agree with. But I definitely, honestly, I appreciated having that kind of I don't want to say easier, but more streamlined experience of the game. But what I liked is you can still play the original as well. A lot of like remade or remastered games come out these days, and they'll put like a easier version of the game in, but they won't give you the option to play the old one, so you don't get to choose, right? And I think that's kind of dumb. But like I like the fact that you can choose and have the old experience if you want, or if you just want to kind of relive this game, but still have a good challenge. But it's not going to be like beating your head through the wall. Uh, I do appreciate that. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely, I agree with that. If you just overall, if you want a revisit to the classic times, and but it like the original mode may be too intimidating for you, then this version works perfectly fine. Um,
Dude, that game was so ahead of its time, though. I feel like, from kind of the like cutscenes of their day, right, with like a little just animated like sequence of events that's going on, telling the story, or just like you said, the dungeons. Even though it's the same kind of visual experience going through them, just like putting your mindset in the fact that like this back in the day was like epic, to go into a three-dimensional dungeon and just see this wall getting closer and closer and bigger, and then suddenly you find a treasure chest or a door, and like it was really really cool to be able to have that back in the day. So man, this is a classic for sure, and it's only like $7 or $8 right now on the Switch. I mean, to me it's an easy pickup. So
yeah, I love that dungeon. Like, even though the dungeons all look the same, at the time it was a technical marvel to see something like that. Like, you've seen games like in arcades that give like that illusion of 3D,
mhm.
like a one-way perspective or
Yeah.
one point perspective, but they did this on an 8-bit Master System console, which is very impressive in itself also.
Well, and it's crazy when you like if you're going like north, right, and then you take a turn, it's not like suddenly the screen flashes to like a new screen on the left. It's like you can see like you can see the turn. Like it looks like real 3D, even though it's, obviously it's not PlayStation 4 3D, but I mean it's very very impressive for the time. So
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool.
I think the one thing is that to know where you're going in the story, you really, really have to pay attention and walk around town and talk to people. Because if you don't, you're going to get lost extremely quick.
Yeah.
Like, like something in the game, like you don't notice that a good like 2 or 3 hours of the game is just trying to find shortcakes to give to a guard, so you can go to a governor's mansion to talk to the governor to give you a means to stop the tyrant Lassic.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of things that show its age, like you said, like it doesn't really give you a lot of direction in the game. Um, these days, like in Dragon Quest XI's example, it'll give you a little quick synopsis if you need to, if you forget where you're supposed to go or what you're supposed to do. Because when it comes to stuff like that, sometimes I just feel like I need the game to basically beat me over the head with where I'm supposed to go, because sometimes I have a habit of just skipping through NPC dialogue, because I just feel like it's going to be something frivolous like, welcome to the town. We have a great town square or something like that, But sometimes a lot, especially in the Fantasy Star series, that dialogue is very, very important. So
Yeah, even though it's really short, it's like welcome to Scion. The stereotypical NPC stuff. It's like it originates from games like this.
yeah, for sure.
But
Yeah.
overall, I highly recommend it if you're looking into retro RPGs.
Yeah.
But someone who's more into modern RPGs and not very open to the old styles, I can't recommend it too much. But if you want to see the roots of RPGs like Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, Phantasy Star, this is one of the gems. Pick them up.
Yeah, for sure. Definite classic. So for sure, I would definitely pick that up if you haven't. But yeah, I've been playing that a little bit, and then I've been playing the Sega Classics some more, just going through some of those games. Honestly, after finally getting my 130 something hours into Dragon Quest 11, I felt like I needed like a short little like break from serious gaming. So I kind of been jumping around on the Sega Classics as well, not getting seriously invested in any system or any particular game, but just playing each game for maybe like 30 or 40 minutes at a time, and just kind of putting it down, making a game save, and then I'll come back to it at a later point. So
how's the quality of the games on there?
honestly, it's really well done. I'm surprised. I've been playing Beyond Oasis a little bit the other night, and what I really like about it is I'm able to go in and mess with a lot of the graphical settings. So I can apply all sorts of filters onto it. I can stretch the screen out if I want to. There's a lot of different options to play the game how you want to, right? And I really appreciate that because you know you don't really get an actual attempt to improve upon the game and actually make it like an emulator experience, right? Where if I went and just downloaded the game on my PC, I could apply all sorts of filters. I could do all sorts of things to it that a lot of times you can't do in these remakes or remasters. So, I mean, the Sega Classics game that just came out like 2 weeks ago, all the games are really, really well done from what I can tell. A lot of the games I never played back in the day, so I can't really compare it to, you know, does this live up to the original? But they seem to play really, really well to me. So, and I haven't really seen any complaints from anybody else. So it's really good.
Oh, good. That's something I plan on picking up after Christmas. So glad to hear it's actually good quality coming out
Yeah,
this time.
yeah. I got the physical edition just because I know the physical editions tend of those types of collections tend to actually hold their value a little bit more than some other games. But I kind of wish I bought the digital version because, you know, I have enough room on my Switch now. I got that new SD card in there, and that's just a ton of games to have on your Switch at all times. So, but, you know, the physical edition is out there if you all want that one. So, yeah. I think we should jump into our Dragon Quest 11 spoiler discussion. Oh boy. So,
Where do we begin?
how many hours did you log into this game?
I would say easily over 100 hours.
Yeah, you know, like I keep saying that like I finished the game with like 130 something hours, but it's hard for me to actually say that's my actual number because you know, a lot of times like I would just pause the menu and then like walk off and go do something else or like I would pass out with the with the game on you know, in the menu or something, so my PlayStation would run for another hour and then turn off, but yeah, I had over 130 hours, but it's probably more like maybe 115, maybe 120, something around there. But needless to say, this was a really, really long game. If you really want to go from the beginning to the end, like the actual post game ending, it's a very long trek for anyone just starting this game out for sure.
Let me tell you exactly what I did.
Go ahead.
I completed every single side quest. I got everyone's best armor, best weapon, like, and I +3 crafted all of them.
Yeah.
All the mini medals.
Geez, so you did way more than I did, and well, and the thing is, like, you're like a Dragon Quest veteran, so you know, you did well with your time. You knew probably exactly what to do. I'm not quite the Dragon Quest veteran that you are, so I had I had to do a lot of trial and error with some of my time. But go ahead.
I mean, I wouldn't say like I'm a skilled player or anything. It's more like I just kind of get the ropes of what to expect from a Dragon Quest game. Like I know there's always going to be mini medals to find. I know there's always like ideal armor and weapons to find that are in harder dungeons. And it's a classical shtick, but in a good way, of course.
So what I did was all my characters are level 99. So I got them all up to level 99. I maxed out all their skill trees. I got a lot of the best weapons and armor, but I didn't get all of it. But by the time I fought the main and beat the final boss, I did craft everything to be +3 that I had. So everything was +3 on every single character. And that was because I was kind of struggling with the final boss. We can get to that later because I was doing something stupid that I think I could have beat him like 30 levels under. But yeah, so I completed a lot of this game. I think probably more so than I do of other games because I'm really not a completionist. But I definitely didn't do all the side quests. That's for sure. That's something I kind of ignored. But
I'm not much of a completionist myself, but there's like just a few series titles out there I feel obligated 100%. Like Zelda and then Dragon Quest. If it's a good Final Fantasy, I want to 100% it.
Yeah.
Like Final Fantasy X, I filled up the sphere grid with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the biggest wastes of times I've ever done.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking like how long would that take somebody? That must have taken forever. And there's no real reward for doing it, from what I understand. But um, yeah, you know, I played a lot of this game. I play, you know, far more than I have of a lot of other RPGs. Uh, and I would say, in general, on a gameplay perspective, I thought it was really well balanced. Um, you know, a lot of times with RPGs, you get stuck in this, and towards the end of the game where you have 3 or 4 select moves that you're going to go to. You have your ultimate weapon, and you just kind of go through life and just kind of like, you know, you just use your supreme skill and just kill everything. Whereas all the way to the very end, you know, I had to rely on certain moves and certain equipment setups to really do well in a battle, and I really appreciated that. Like, there's a lot of strategic value in the way this game was balanced. I felt like I could actually use special skills or spells. A lot of times with games, you can use spells, but it uses like half your MP. Whereas this game, you know, it'll use like 8 MP or 12 MP, and I can do it like 1,000 times if I want to, but it's not so powerful where it's just ends the battle. Like, it was just perfectly balanced, uh, like system that like really just, um, I don't know. I can't express it better than that. It was just really well balanced to me, anyways.
Oh yeah, I mean, the pacing of that game was so great. Like, there rarely felt times I felt I needed to grind a little bit, just because I it was similar to what happened in Dragon Quest Nine, where it's like if you keep running away from monsters, the bosses are going to be really hard. So when I
Hmm.
played it this time, I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's probably going to be the same thing. If I keep dodging stuff, it's only going to get harder on me. So every time I see a monster, I just run into it, and about the time I get to the boss, it's like I'm at a good level to fight the boss. And it's still challenging. It's like I'm not overwhelming the boss, but the boss is not overwhelming me.
See, I went through a couple different strategies going through the game. Initially, I was doing like you were saying, and I was fighting practically every enemy or most enemies. And I was getting to that point where like I would feel perfectly set for the boss. But then I started a different method where I would just spend one day and just grind. And then I would spend the next 2 or 3 days just running past enemies to get to the boss until I'd get to a point where it was too difficult, and then I'd grind again, and then I would like try to zoom through the game. And I don't know, that worked for me pretty well. And honestly, I didn't feel like I was completely over leveled, but I do think the main game, I would say, uh, aside from a few bosses, I felt like it was far too easy. Um, and that may have been because I was a little over leveled. But for example, like the final boss, not the final boss, but the first final boss.
It's spoiler
Uh,
territory. Say what you want, man.
yeah, a Mortigan.
Mortigan.
Yeah. So okay, this is what happened with this boss, right? I battled him normally. I like entered every command and I beat him, and then I was like, okay, here's the cutscene. Here's the final cutscene of the game. The little thing blipped up on my PlayStation 4 that said this was a block scene, and then the game crashed. And I was like, what? Like, I thought this was the final scene of the game. And my PS4 crashed. And I was like, I just beat the final boss. I have to do that over again. So I was so irritated. I went to the final boss again. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to do this again. And so
That
what
boss sucks too.
yeah, well, what I did was I was like, I was just like, I don't feel like doing this again right now, anyways, because it was late at night. I just put it on auto battle, all my characters on auto battle. And then I just went out and got some fast food. I came back, I sat down, ate my fast food, and like, dude, auto battle, my entire party killed Morgan. It took like 30 minutes, but like I didn't get a game over on auto battle. And I remember thinking like, that's not good. That's not that's not a good final boss. But luckily the game kept going, and in the post game content, I was not able to auto battle my way through things. But I did find a couple bosses in the game where I could actually auto battle my way through it, which uh,
Auto
wasn't.
battle's been a thing since like forever in Dragon Quest. So
Yeah, but I know, but I feel like it was very smart in this game, for me, anyways. So I don't know. Did you use auto battle at all for this game, or did you enter every command for every character the whole game?
Every command for every character throughout the whole game. I don't think encounters are. The thing about the game is each encounter is pretty fast, and there's not so many encounters that I feel like, oh, this is taking forever. Just hit the auto battle button.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there have been some games where I've been like, yeah, the grind's just horrendous. Let's just put an auto battle on this. But Dragon Quest XI in particular, not one of them for me.
Yeah, well, you know what it was? I think that what I would do is while I was grinding, I would put most of the characters on auto battle except the main hero, because I was just like, whatever. I know what you're gonna do. Like, I don't want to select it. You just do it, and I'm gonna do my move and whatever. I would just kind of like monitor the situation, and occasionally auto battle would screw me over. Like, they'd have a character that would heal the main hero instead of like attacking. But I'm like Hendrik, why are you healing right now? Serena's gonna heal. Why are you healing? You need to attack, you know? So occasionally auto battle would screw me, and I would have to go in there and kind of like adjust things. But yeah, once I got into the post game content, that pretty much was, those days were over. Like, there was no more there was no more auto battling anything. It was all like me strategically choosing everything, because that just wasn't an option anymore. But I do think the game was probably a little too easy for most people. Although I would say the game gives you a little warning when you start it up, like, hey, if you're a veteran of this series, maybe you should try going up a difficulty level. I don't know. I never like doing that. I don't like to start my first run of the game on hard mode. You know, I like to play the whatever they intended it to be. But yeah, I thought it was.
I think any RPG, like veteran hardcore RPG player, I don't think they're going to get a challenge out of this. And like I said, the draconian thing is just like artificial ways to make the game harder.
Right, like there's no ends or something like that, or you can't buy equipment. You have to craft everything or something, like little challenges like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you can even do one. I don't remember, but I think you can even do one where you don't get EXP. You're at like level 1.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, how are you supposed to get through the game like that?
Yeah, it's just crazy. And when you realize people actually do that stuff, it makes you feel like, man, it makes you feel like a big baby for struggling with anything. You know, the fact that somebody got through it at level 1. But I did think, honestly, dude, the post game content of this game, like, look, sometimes when I hear people talk about post game content of games, I kind of cringe. I'm like, okay, like, you know, you're talking about a couple of extra bosses. This post game content was easily, if you wanted it to be, like an extra 40 hours. Like, there was so much stuff for you to do. There's so
much.
Yeah, there's so many cutscenes. The plot line keeps going. Like it's almost a full game in of itself. It's like Dragon Quest 11-2. You know, so it's not really, like, to me, it's not really post game content. It's almost like a whole nother game. But like, there's a lot of things that you can do in the post game content that does require a lot of strategy. And one of the things that I thought was a good example of this was the trials. And there's a couple different trials in the post game content, but the main one is in Angela, I think it was, where you had
Agrila.
Agrila, you had to defeat like a set of enemies and a certain amount of moves. And that having that restriction on there where you had to defeat the enemies in a certain amount of moves really had to make you think strategically. And a lot of times, or most of the time, you had to pick a specific character or maybe only 2 characters, right, for that battle. So you couldn't pick your best lineup. Dude, I spent a lot of time trying to get through all. I think it was 5 levels of it. I can't remember exactly, but I got through all of them.
There are 3 main levels of that trial.
I thought there was like 4 or 5.
There's like the trial of the warrior, the trial of the sage, and the trial of the hero.
I don't know. Maybe it's just because I spent so much time on it. Well, I think individually, each one has like 4, right? So you can get 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, or 4 stars, or something like that, based upon how many moves you defeat the enemy in.
Yeah. So like the last one, within 50 turns, you have to defeat the two giants.
Hmm.
And it screwed me over because I didn't know. I focused on one at a time. So I was just like using all my strong single hits to take one out so it'd be easier to deal with the other. And right when I do that, the other one instantly revives the other one. And
Yeah.
that frustrated me to no end. I
Well,
was like, you mother.
did you do it in the pre-game or the post-game content? Did you do the trials?
You can only do it post game.
Okay, I thought you could do it before that. Because I never tried it, but
Um,
because I went there and they offered it to me, but I'm like, I'm not doing this.
I don't I don't remember. I think maybe you got the earlier level trials. You're talking about the mountain pass one. Like you're up on the mountain with the monks.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's what you're talking about. I was talking about the main story one.
No, 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 no.
But you're right. There I think there was 5 to 6 of them,
Yeah.
and you do have to beat them within a certain amount of turns. And which it does kind of fall into the last one. The last one was a just a really annoying one because you kind of had to take a chance on it. Like you had to make sure that like you kill these enemies within a certain time because they'll heal and revive each other.
You know what it was? It was yeah, because you had your instructor or whatever. I can't remember her name, but she would stand there, and if you did not defeat the enemy within 3 turns, she would just bring out more of them. And
Yeah.
so, and like these would be enemies that like only specific characters could like really kill like easily, right? So it'd be like one group of like metallic people like enemies, or like a group of slimes, or people that were like a lot of magic, right, or something like that. And like there were certain characters that I had that were just not very effective for certain groups. And
Oh, you have to take Jade and Eric for the metal slimes. Like
yeah,
lightning thrust and assassinate is, or
yeah,
or I mean
a
the
critical
critical,
hit,
yeah, the
yeah,
critical hit ability. Those are just like needed for those metal
yeah,
ones. And even then, you have to pray that Jade's lightning thrust goes off.
yeah. Well, I mean, dude, once I found out that Eric could do the critical hit, like it was just like suddenly I started like farming for metal slimes because I was just like, this is amazing. Because before I heard about farming for metal slimes, meaning like you could have I think it was golden light or electrolyte or something like that, where your main hero Jade and then Sylvando, I think it was, were all pepped up. They could turn all the enemies into metal slimes, but I could never really kill them in a time because it would take so long, and then they'd run off, and I was like, this was a waste of time. But once I got Eric and his critical hit ability, dude, I just would go through and just critical hit each one, and they would die. So once I got to that one part in the trials, on the top of the mountain with the metallic enemies, I mean, it was just like, oh, I know what to do. This is game over right here. So
Now, when you grinded yourself up to max level, did you use Hero, Jade, and Eric's pet before you use Hero,
yes.
Jade, and
Well, okay.
Sylvando's?
So initially, I just grinded to like level 75 or 76, the old fashioned way of just running around. And then I was just like, how are so many people getting to level 99 so easily? And so that's when I researched, and people were saying, oh, like, you can farm for metal slimes. So I just did it the regular way. And I did not use Eric's like ability where he doubles the experience points in gold. And I did it the normal way. And like, I was just like, this is just, it would take me an hour and a half to get to get to where I needed to be. And I would level up like 4 times, which is great. But I was like, it was not going as fast as I wanted to. Once I got Eric's ability where he would, double the experience points and gold that you get, life became so much easier because then I'd beat the battle and I'd get like 800,000 experience points. Like everyone would grow like 7 levels. But it still took a while because I would have to get everyone pepped up again after I used it. Right. So, because I think I had to use Jade, the main hero, and Eric. And I would use the item like boost or whatever. I think it was called Hallelujah or something like that. And then at that point, I would have to sit around and just keep defending, waiting for everyone to get pepped up again.
Yep.
I was just like,
Yeah.
dude, come on. And I don't know. By the time I started getting pep pops or whatever that would like pep up your entire party, like everyone was already like in their mid 90s. And I was like, oh, this would have been nice like 20 levels ago. So, it was an easy way to grind, but it still took a long time. It wasn't like, I didn't have to do anything. It still took a lot of effort.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a faster way. I did a similar thing, got my characters up in the 70s before I decided to use that exploit. And I mean, it was a beautiful way to level. Like, I got myself to 99 within that same day.
Yeah.
I did
So
it.
that was a really good experience actually figuring that out. But uh, you know, how did you fare with the actual final boss? Uh,
Calypso?
was it or Klasmos or whatever?
Yeah, I think it was like one of those two names. Geez, I haven't played it that long ago. I'm already starting to forget stuff.
Yeah.
um, no, I mean, it wasn't
Did you?
bad. I mean, I fought him when I was level 99, so
Yeah. Did you beat him on the first attempt?
yeah.
Did
And
you
even
use the sword?
Mortigan, I beat Mortigan on the second attempt.
Oh, okay. See, okay, so I guess my real question is, did you know to use the Sword of Light on Kalasmos?
Yeah,
Did the game tell you to do that? Because I must have missed that.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. I feel so dumb. I fought him like 4 or 5 times and I was not using the Sword of Light. And dude, like this was like just a war of attrition fighting him without the so just him in complete armor. Like I was just like barely keeping alive, and it was just like like it was one of the most ridiculous boss fights I'd ever encountered for a mainline boss, like story boss, right? Not, I'm not talking about like the extra bosses in RPGs. Like I was getting so frustrated that this was the boss holding me back from the like beating the game. Like I was getting so frustrated, and I knew I kept getting close to defeating him because he would turn white, and like apparently from what I read, that meant that he only had a couple thousand HP left, but he would then send this like giant asteroid down and annihilate my entire party. And I could not understand how I was supposed to survive that more than like I think I like one person would survive after that, and it was just downhill from there. But finally, I read another guide somewhere, and they were like, "Yeah, just use the Sword of Light, and then he's dramatically easier." And I'm like, "What?" And I went and did that. And I was level 99, and I think I beat him in like 6 minutes after that. And I was like, "Oh, this
I
this
had
was
two sort of lights.
oh well, there you go."
The Supreme sort of light, and then like the
Yeah.
other Supreme, or like the other sort of light.
How did it take you? How long did it take you to beat him? Do you remember? It must have gone. See,
Not
I don't
long.
know.
It was about a 10-minute fight.
Yeah, so to me, like it seemed dramatically shorter, just because the other fights were so drawn out. Um, but like because I didn't know about the Sword of the Light deal, that's why I kept going back, and I was like getting hardcore into crafting, and like I +3 to everything that I owned, and like I was doing so much extra side content because I was just like, do I really need like the very best of everything to beat this guy? And once I found that that's what you were supposed to do, I finally beat the game. But um, dude, honestly, if it wasn't for that misunderstanding, I don't think I would have really given the crafting system in this game any time of day, because I tried it a couple times early in the game, here and there, and I had some minor success with it, but most of the time I didn't have enough focus to do what I wanted, or the items that I had weren't good enough to really make anything useful to me. But once I got into the post game content, I got hardcore into crafting. I dumped like maybe 20 hours into crafting stuff, and going out and finding items and researching where I can like farm items, and going back and making special accessories that would help me get through certain bosses that would use status ailments like paralyze that would just wreck my world. I mean, the crafting system in this game was really, really fun.
Yeah, and it's very simple too. I mean, like even making the +3 stuff, the secret to it is um just like keep going triple hit on like items until you get a crit, and then you like use the triple whammy, and like all the ones around you are just going skyrocketing. And the good thing is that just every time you mess up, it's like okay, just reset the game and
Yeah.
try again. I mean, there's a 5 minute penalty, right? No matter if you reload the save or not, but you still keep your items. So.
Yeah. I mean, all in all, I think like it's kind of funny because it felt like a almost like a kind of like a slot machine, in that like there was a lot of I know there's a lot of RNG involved with just when you're going to get a critical hit, or the various like boosts that you would get throughout while you're you know supposedly hacking away on your item and trying to improve it. But it was really really addicting for me, so I really enjoyed it. The inventory management, not a big fan. Like they did a this game was better than my experience with Dragon Quest V, because I could actually equip stuff that was in other people's hands, which was perfect. But I really did not like that when I was trying to sell equipment, that I could not see what an item that was in my equipment bag, if it was useful for let's say Eric, right? If a dagger was useful for Eric, I couldn't see if, or a shield, I couldn't see if that was actually something I wanted to sell without exiting out of the shop menu and then going into my inventory, giving it to Eric, and then having him try to equip it to see if it was useful. And I'd be like, oh, this isn't useful at all. And then I'd go back into the shop menu and try to sell it. I feel like that could have been streamlined a little bit. I don't feel like that was actually necessary, but I mean, that's really the only complaint I have with it. That, and sometimes I'd be trying to sell stuff, and the shopkeeper would say, "Are you sure? You may not be able to ever get this item again." And like, so I just have like pages of pieces of equipment that I apparently can't ever get again, but I have no reason why. I have no idea why I have it. It'd be like a sword that I could sell for like 300 gil, or not gil, gold, but apparently I'm not supposed to sell it, so I
I
like
think
never
they
found a
did
use.
that for like every quest item.
Is that what it was for? I
I think
I
they
figured it
related
was
the
something like
quest.
that. Yeah. So,
Hmm.
but I mean, it's whatever. You're gonna run into inventory management issues in every game, and honestly, this was a lot better than like Xenoblade or anything like that. So I didn't mind it too much.
Oh yeah, I mean there's some small hurdles, but I'll take that like over you said like something like Xenoblade 2's UI where it's like whoa.
It's like this is almost a whole game in of itself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I was like, where was this exact thing I'm looking for again? I can't find it in the menu. Like, oh, so it was a sub menu within the menu, and a menu within that. Like, ugh. I mean, Dragon Quest 11 may not have the most intuitive UI, but it is still a very simple one.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. One thing I thought was hilarious though were some of the um, options or outfits that people could wear, like Rab, for example. Like routinely, there was like outfits that were only for Serena, and it would be like a dress or something like that. But apparently, Rab could also wear it. And I was just like, what in the world? Or the one outfit that you get from Sylvando, where the main hero is just like waving the whole time, and he's like waving his hips back and forth. And it's like a giant flower around him. Like I was just like,
Oh,
what is
yeah, the
this?
parade.
Yeah,
There's
dude.
one for
And
your hero also.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And like,
Hmm.
that was like the best armor I could have for like 2 hours. So like I was just like, I by the time I like got some new equipment, I was just like, thank God, because I'm tired of wearing this. Even in like cutscenes and stuff, he's just like sitting there like waving. But it was hilarious at first. So that
Yeah, that
a lot of
equipment system. Like, I loved it when I got Irwin's armor on the hero,
that was awesome. Yeah.
but like it immediately got switched out by something better for like 2 hours later. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, is there no glamour system in this game? I'm like, no. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, all in all, it was really, really good. I thought I was kind of confused why certain outfits or certain armor sets would like change the appearance of a character in battle and then other ones would not. I was a little confused by that, but I kind of just a minor observation. It didn't really bother me too much.
I think
But I
some
thought,
you need the full ensemble to make it count.
is that what it was? Okay, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
like trying to remember. Like the whole hero garb for the
Hmm.
hero at the end, it's like you need all three pieces to make it to make the glamour appear.
Mm, that makes sense. I mean, I guess it would have been a little too much to have them mismatch everything.
Yeah, I get it. It's but again, I wish there was kind of like a glamour thing in place where I could, like, if I wanted to wear Irwin's armor the whole time, I could.
Yeah. You want to just jump in the story?
Let's do it.
Cool. So I think the story I have a lot of I have some negative things about the story, then I have some good things about the story. Um, but I mean I could just jump into some of the negative things I got right now, and then maybe I'll talk about some of the positive things. But I feel like in a general sense, I feel like the motivations for both villains were kind of weak and they're like not really apparent for most of the game. Um, which kind of left me feeling like detached from the main story oftentimes. If you remember in the previous podcast where we talked about non spoilers of this game, my general feeling with this game was it was more like a collection of stories, and that, like, you know, every town you visited, there would be a beginning, middle, and end. Then you would go to a new area, and like that's just the general pacing of the game. And like I never really felt the villain's presence. Like I didn't really learn why they were doing what they were doing until the very end of the game. And I mean, it wasn't horribly done or anything, but you know, I felt like um, I would have liked to have had more of a presence from the enemy throughout the game. Um,
It's kind of been like that with every Dragon Quest. Even like for the very first game,
mhm,
your objective is to save the princess and defeat the Dragon Lord. And those are actually kind of two separate tasks. They're a little bit one and the same, but you save the princess like halfway through the game. And then you don't actually meet the Dragon Lord until the very end of the game, where he proposes to you that, like, it's like, why don't you actually join me and we can take over the world?
yeah,
Or you can fight me and kick my ass, which you probably will.
yeah.
So yeah,
I,
it's been like that. I can't. I'm trying to think of every Dragon Quest, and the villain doesn't very often have a living presence. I think a villain that did have the most presence in the game was Dual Magus in Dragon Quest VIII. But
yeah.
even then, like the true villain after Dual Magus didn't show his true colors until the very end of the game.
Hmm. Which, you know, I guess you don't necessarily need a presence throughout you know, a story. Lord of the Rings, for example, you don't really see the villain ever. Right? It's just kind of you know that there's this mastermind behind everything. And so I guess that kind of that works to a degree, but um yeah, I just felt like there was this evil force out there. I didn't really know why they were evil, and apparently they were affecting the world, but it seemed like the events that I was experiencing, while good on their own right, didn't really have much to do with the villain other than a few lines of dialogue that just kind of add in there, like, "Oh yeah, the evil one, he told me to do this," or something like that. But you know, that was the only thing that would be added in. But when you look at each sequence of events by themselves, like if you look at the mermaid tale, or your first time going to Sniffleheim, or
Oh,
think,
the before telling you the mermaid story. How hard did you get hit in the fields on that one?
yeah, that was well done, man. I really
Yeah,
enjoyed that. It was that was a definite highlight for the game,
I didn't
for
play
me.
this game to feel.
Yeah. So when I experience stuff like that, I think to myself, like, this is really well done. This is really well executed. But I kept, while I was playing the game, feeling like something's not quite like 100% with me with the story. And I couldn't put my fingers on it because I would experience stuff like that. I'm like, this was great. This was fantastic. But then I kept thinking, like, well, where's Mortigan, right? Or where's the Dark One, or like, well, what's their involvement in this? And I guess it's like you said, like it's kind of a tradition for the evil or the villain to just kind of be something to work towards, and you're not really gonna, it's not like Final Fantasy where you're gonna see cutscenes with the villain, every half hour. It's more of a experiencer of the journey more than experiencing, interacting with the villain on a regular basis, which I can respect, but it is just an observation that I had. Uh, I think one other thing that I definitely rubbed me the wrong way, and I'm kind of curious to see what you think about this because I both liked it and I disliked it. So after you beat the game, at one point you get to go back in time and kind of fix things, which I thought was really, really cool. I really liked the events after that. But what rubbed me the wrong way is that the rest of my team didn't come with me. And like, I felt like the vast majority of my team's character development happened after Yggdrasil fell and after Mortigan took over. So when I'm the only one that goes back and like I correct that, like I save Veronica and like I do all these other things, like that's great. But like I felt like, I felt like there was a lot of character development that just like would hit the reset button, like Serena, she had tremendous amounts of character growth. She was a totally different person. By the time you beat the game the first time, she cut her hair. I thought it was a big Final Fantasy 9 moment. But, she was a much more mature person, much more confident. She went through some stuff. You got to really get close with Hendrik and learn his experiences with Jasper and Safando's attempts to make the world happy that changed him and he became a more confident person, and all these things were like really well done. And then you go back and you hit the reset button and it's like all that's wiped clean. And the game at least lets you go back and kind of redo a lot of the same things. But like the thing with Eric's sister, like, okay, like the first time you do it, his sister learns.
Well,
Go ahead. Sorry.
Before you go to that, it felt very off-putting at first because I even mentioned it to you when I first beat the game, or like the other people who already got that point. I was asking around forums and such before I continued anything. And I was like, "Is it like what is this?" I'm like they're giving me all the warning signs in the world in the video in this game that if you do this, you are going to go back to a point in the game to what pretty much the halfway point of the game.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to make it different this time. So I was thinking to myself, like, is this going to be a new game plus type thing? I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, I've got to make sure I do a separate save file, which I did, and I still have I still have my pre-post game
me too.
one, and I have the other one. And people are like, just trust us, just play the post game. And I'm so glad I did because it really did feel more like a continuation. Now, it was sad that I didn't get to bring the other party members with me per se, but it was very emotional when it happened. Like I felt like I was letting go of everything I have obtained in that game to start over and save Veronica and prevent the world from what it went through. So it really felt like a tough choice that made it very emotional for me. I'm very and at the end of the day, I'm very glad it did it because it just gave so much more to the game. And I was a little scared first at also because like my characters were still at the level they were before Yggdrasil fell. So I was like, oh no, I just did all this grinding.
Yeah.
And but turns out it was okay. There was a point in the story where they make a story convenience and give the characters all their stats, weapons, and equipment back. So it was all
I
good
was
then.
I was very thankful for that because that was one of my main frustrations at first. But I figured they would have to do that at some point because I figured there was no way they're going to let me do all that grinding and then just let it go out the window.
Yeah, but overall, I liked it. I was just very hesitant to do it.
Yeah, I mean, look, there is some positives and some negatives from like doing that, and that was definitely a good way to expand the game. And it was definitely interesting to be able to re-experience a lot of events and make different choices. And you know, the fact that I was able to beat Jasper easily, you know, the second time I went to go fight him, and seeing Mortigan trying to go after the sword, and you know, constantly, and like, you know, it was a very very entertaining. But I just hated the fact that, you know, I felt like Serena, like she didn't really have the same character growth that she had prior. You know, Eric's sister, while we were able to go back and fix that again, you know, I felt like she didn't really learn anything the second time. You know, or Hendrik, I feel like he didn't really have the closure with Jasper that he had the first time. But you know, there was a lot to gain in the second half too, or the post game too. But it definitely was uh, a moment in the game that I would say is probably going to be controversial from this day forward. I think.
Yeah, but I think overall both endings of the game were very good ones, and I think I think what I like is I think they ultimately leave it up to you what ending you rather enjoy or what interpretation of it. Because basically, in a way, they just gave you two scenarios split, where is Mortigan succeeds in dropping Yggdrasil, and the one he doesn't. So when the one he doesn't, it actually turned out that Mortigan was actually possessed by the real final boss of the game, and he was actually one of the original heroes, the magician of the heroes,
Yeah, I thought that
before he
was a
got turned. That was a nice little
twist.
twist to it.
Yeah, I
Uh,
enjoyed that for sure.
yeah, and like I did like, and it went dark also when it turned out that he murdered the hero. Essentially, like this graceful hero that we've been trying to aspire to the entire game
Yeah,
got backstabbed.
I thought that was very like I kind of chuckled a little bit when I saw that because, you know, throughout the entire game, there's this legendary hero. They're doing all this crazy stuff, but they die from a knife wound in the back. And I'm like, okay, whatever. You know, every RPG has a scene like that where, you know, a character can get stabbed 1,000 times and live, but you know, a single thrust will do it.
You see how you
But
finish them off is you don't stab him in the front, you stab him in the back. We
yeah,
got
that'll do it.
we got Eris, we got that hero. You know, that's the trick.
Delita. Well, Delita, I think
Get the
Delita took one
spinal
in the
cord.
gut. Yeah. I think that'll, yeah, I think you're right. That'll do it every time. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I enjoyed that. Like, I enjoyed getting some of that background. I kind of around that same time, we get to see Veronica in her like adult form. And I thought for sure, like, I was like, oh, okay, like, well, this is one of the things we're fixing. She's finally going to get that spell lifted off of her that makes her a kid. And like, they still put her back as a kid after that scene, which I thought was strange.
Yeah, and on top of that, the adult version of her just kind of looked like a taller version of her. She didn't necessarily look older.
Bigger.
Like she just looked bigger. Yeah, I guess that's
Yeah.
the way to put it. I mean, she looks pretty much like her sister as an adult for the most part, but she still has like the kind of like the pigtails and the in like the young girl like dress or something like that. So it was really hard to still see her as an adult. She just looked like a really tall young girl.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a weird moment, but it was still a nice emotional moment because you've been kind of curious about what she actually looks like the whole game.
Mhm.
Because I know it's by design, but a lot of times it's hard to forget that she's actually an adult.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
think that's the intent because they, you know, she's rambunctious like a little girl.
mhm.
So, you know, you keep forgetting that until she says something like really smart or knows something like the party doesn't. It's like, oh yeah, right. She's the same age as everyone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really liked her attitude and her just general like way of approaching things. And but yeah, you could definitely forget that she wasn't an adult until she would start using some big words or realize that nope, she's not a kid. She's an adult.
I thought at first she would be someone that's kind of like an annoying cutesy type of thing,
I
but
liked her.
yeah, they treat her with like total respect in this game. They don't make her out to be like annoying or anything. They make her like she's more like the tough one, if anything. Like and like Serena's like the nice one, and she's the tough one
Yeah,
of the
I
twin
will.
sisters.
And kind of like that dynamic between the sisters, I thought was really well done. They play the cutscene a few times where they're sitting in that tent or whatever, and Serena says, if we're born together, do you think we'll die together? And she says, "Oh, you're always a little late." I thought that was like a really cool foreshadowing because when it eventually does happen, she does die. They kind of reflect on. Did she know this was going to happen? I really liked their relationship. I thought that was really well done, and just in general, I thought the chemistry of the characters was really well done
I think
for this game.
yeah, I think Veronica's death didn't really hit me until they found like what was remaining of her next to the grave, and they find her and their spirit goes away.
See, I didn't know she died until that moment. Maybe I was a little dense,
Well, we
but
didn't know, but you know, but it's like you kept wondering if she lived or died because of what she did, and then like you know that like someone goes missing, like say you have like a family member that goes missing, and you're just
mhm,
wondering, and you haven't seen them for years, and you're wondering if they're alive or dead,
yeah,
and then like you see them, and then you get the realization that they're actually dead. They've been
mhm,
dead the whole time, even though you've been holding on to hope.
yeah,
It's that similar feeling with
mhm,
Veronica. It's like that's when it hit you.
mhm,
It's that moment. I'm like, oh man. I was like, I feel so bad for Serena.
yeah. Well, especially uh, later in the game when they approach Jasper and he's kind of like disguised himself as Veronica. It was almost kind of creepy, and to see Serena approach that and just immediately be like, "That's not you're not my sister." That's not something she would have said. I thought really showed some of her character growth as a character in this game, because I feel like earlier in the game she would have just caved and started crying, but she really toughened up after that experience.
hmm Speaking of Jasper, if I did have to complain about something in the story in the game, I think you brought it up earlier too. Hey, I love Hendrik. Hendrik is a awesome character. He's like that really cool knight
Yeah.
that like everyone wants to be. Like even they even display that in the game. Like in the tournament, there's a statue of him. It's like you go through the game, and Jasper and Hendrik have been after you this whole time, and no one says anything nice about Jasper. But everyone's like, oh, Hendrik is just the best. He's such a nice guy. He's such a hero. He's always there for the people. And I'm like, this is the same guy that's like just been chasing me, going, I'm gonna get you, Darkspawn, and stuff like that. And I'm like, is this the same guy? And then when you actually get to be around him and see his story, it's like, yeah, this guy is 100% a hero. Like I
Yeah,
see why people love him.
I really, really enjoyed when we actually got to travel with him. We got to go to, the castle, and then we got to touch Yggdrasil, and we got to see his childhood with Jasper and kind of understand their dynamic. That was very, very enjoyable to me, and it really took uh, a character that was pretty much one dimensional. Like you said, he was always screaming about Darkspawn, and that was his one note: "You evil Darkspawn." And then he suddenly becomes this totally different character. I really, really enjoyed that. I I liked Jasper in a sense that like I thought like he was well explained, which was at least one villain that was well explained. But I do think it's a little old. It's a little tiring of a plot point to have the one of the evil guys just be someone who's maybe not as strong as Hendrik or as strong as the other character, and he's jealous. Um,
But
they do that a lot.
yeah, the two things that bother me about Jasper is one, it's actually from both timelines of dealing with Jasper. And the first one is when you're in Mortigan's castle and you defeat him.
Hmm.
Like you get that emotional moment from him between Hendrik and Jasper, and like, and there's a point where like Jasper is just like content with knowing he's got beaten, and then he dies right afterward. So it felt, I felt like the emotional tension between the two after seeing all their flashbacks with each other, where Jasper's like always been jealous of Hendrik,
Yeah.
and when you find and but right when you go to the next floor, it's
He
like,
returns.
yeah, it turns out I'm not
Yeah.
dead. I'm
I
gonna
didn't
get
like
you this time. I'm like, wait, why did you just do that?
Yeah, I didn't like that at all because that was such a good ending with him just like walking away. Like he's like, I'm not even going to acknowledge this guy anymore. Hendrik towards Jasper, like this is just done. And then like I was like, that was a great close to a chapter. And then they're just like, nope, I'm just kidding. Everything I just said did not matter. I just said that.
Yeah,
That was a little odd.
it was
So
odd. And in the other timeline, you just straight up defeat him in Yggdrasil, and you just never see him again. Like I like the whole time I was waiting for something to happen.
yeah.
Like he would return in some way, shape, or form.
Well, I thought the Hendrix closing words the second time after the new plot line with Jasper, I felt like it was a good exchange of words. Like I felt like it was well written, but it did seem odd to me because in the previous timeline, it took Hendrik and Jasper a long time to get to that point. Whereas in the new timeline, like it was clearly like they were just trying to tie this loose end up real quick. And it was well written, it was well executed, but like I feel like it seemed a little quick to me. So I agree with that.
Yeah, overall, really, it's one timeline, but it's like all the characters coming to like terms with their dilemmas
Hmm.
in the Mortigan storyline, and then in the post game storyline, it's like we kind of just go through it. We get a little more details about
Yeah.
like the relationships of people in the post game, but it's really the Mortigan story where you really just got the, you know, the drama from it,
Hmm.
to say.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, well, before, like right we mentioned earlier, like with Eric, like his sister, you go through a whole dungeon in the Mortigan storyline, the whole gold mansion,
hmm
and you go through that entire scene in that boss fight. And in the normal one, you don't do that. You just bring her back, and she's all good.
Yeah, and I remember thinking at that point, like, well, I'm glad that I was at least able. I'm glad they didn't overlook this plot point. Like, what about Eric's sister? Because I'm not sure Eric would have been as okay with this deal if he knew like his sister wouldn't be saved to save Veronica. That might have been a little difficult for him to choose. So I'm glad we went back and saved her again. But I kept wondering, is she still that greedy little girl? you know, because part of that experience was her own character growth, realizing that, there's more to life than just wealth, right? Even if you did grow up poor, I have my brother. I care about my brother. He's my only family, etc. Um, and my greed almost made me kill my brother, right? So in the second time, when main hero just kind of like, oh, here, I got you, heals you. I kept wondering, like, well, is this still going to be a reoccurring issue later? But I was glad that we were able to resolve that. One thing that I thought was kind of did rub me a little bit the wrong way was I felt like there was a couple of small little plot holes, uh, two big ones really that maybe you can explain. Maybe I missed something, but um, one of them was dealing with Eric and his sister. The first time you ventured to Sniffleheim, I don't really remember anybody really reacting to Eric that much, if at all. So I thought it was strange the second time that I visited Sniffleheim, like everyone in the town was like, Eric, what are you doing here? Like, we haven't seen you in forever. Why didn't you say something? And like it was like suddenly Eric grew up there and like all the people knew who he was. And like I was just like, why wasn't this brought up the first time we went to Sniffleheim? I thought it was very, very odd. And I feel like that should have been done the first time we went there. Uh, so, and his amnesia too was very odd to me. But did that seem odd to you when you went back to Snuffleheim and suddenly, everyone recognized Eric and he was like, this was his hometown, I guess, at one point.
I didn't really think about that, but I guess yeah, that could be a complaint in the
Yeah.
story.
And then I guess the other thing that seemed like a plot hole to me, and it was so hard for me when I recognized this because the scene was so well done. But very very early in the game, when the main hero goes to Cobblestone to see the state of his hometown, and you have that flashback, or not flashback, but you go back in time briefly, and you're talking to your grandfather, and basically, the main character doesn't speak, but they tell the grandfather, "Hey, I went to King Carnelian like you told me to, and he tried to kill me." And your grandfather says, "Oh my God, like if I had known." Okay, here's what you need to do. When you go back to your timeline, or to your time, there's this three-sided rock on the other side of the town. Go there, I'll go now, and I'll go bury some stuff that'll help you. And I keep thinking, like, if you can go to the other side of town and bury something that will help me, how about you just tell me not to go to King Carnelian?
Like, P.S. Don't go to King Carnelian. He will kill you.
Like, that would have been way more useful. Why are you still going to let me go there? But so
the plot's got to move forward.
Yeah, I know. So I just was like, look at that, and I was like, oh God.
It was funny hearing your main character talk as a kid, but then again, they've done that before. Dragon Quest V, when you interact with yourself in that game,
yeah,
with the gold orb, it's like your self is speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
there is that, but it was a little funny to hear me like just be like have that very British young kid's accent.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny about that is because I think we've talked about this before a little bit with this game, because the story is so personal. It may have worked a little bit better in this game, perhaps, if the main character had an actual voice actor, even though that would probably make the hardcore Dragon Quest fan base upset for changing something that's been a main part of the game, having that main character that's supposed to be your avatar, basically.
It's debatable, but I think the supporting cast is so strong,
yeah,
that they hold everything together, so it allows something like a silent protagonist in the group.
I would agree. I totally agree. But I think it's odd if their main goal is, especially nowadays, if their main goal is to have the reason for having a silent protagonist is so that you, the player, will become more invested in the story, because you're supposed to identify with this character. Well, I feel like they can very easily let me design the character, right? So, like, why don't you let me do that then? Because I don't look like that. And it's kind of funny because one of our listeners, Leanne, she was saying that she's playing the game, and I think she named her character Leanne, right? And she's like, okay, like this is me or whatever. But then it kept throwing her out of the game because people kept referring to her character as a boy. And it's like, well, you're already picking so much about the character that's not me, right? The way he looks, how old he is, his gender, like in 2018, this is not an avatar of the character. It's just someone who's not speaking.
Yeah. There's a couple Dragon Quest games where you can choose between male and female, 3, 4, and 9 in particular.
Mm-hmm.
I remember on top of my head. Oh, and 10, obviously, it's an online game. But I think with this type of game, and those Dragon Quest 8 also, is that there is a lot more narrative to the story.
Mm-hmm.
And your main character is a lot more involved in the story than the other games where you did get to choose between a male and a female. And there are scenes in the game, particularly with Gemma. I mean, you have the option to marry Gemma in this game,
which I did.
But yeah, I did also, because it's like the only choice left. It's like, okay, I'll marry her then. But and that was weird too. I just go home. She's like, "Hi, honey." I'm like, "Oh, did we get the marriage stuff done already?" I was like, "Sweet."
Yeah, I was like,
okay.
"Oh, I'm glad she had a choice in this."
Yeah, but the narrative is just a lot stronger in this, and it's more personal for the characters. So I think it's easier overall to pick one or the other, male or female, and go with the whole story with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly would be for if there was a narrative heavy game with a female hero, as long as as long as the story is made for that.
A silent protagonist. Yeah.
Yeah, or like the silent
or a female
protagonist role.
character.
But
Okay.
yeah, or it's like actions that a female would do that a male wouldn't, or something like that. Not just like make a complete blank slate, unless you want to do the male female choice again. But in doing that, you have to kind of get rid of some of the qualities between a male and a female
Yeah.
on
Well,
that, which can
yeah.
make for an even more blank slate of a character.
See, in this game though, like I think that it worked really, really well, just like you said, because the cast was so strong. Like I think they carried the game for having a silent protagonist. But I just feel like if they could have just had somebody that would have talked, I think it would have been even better. Because man, there were so many scenes where like it was almost ridiculous. The main character was not talking because people would be talking directly to them. And then they'd be like, "What do you think?" And then you would see the main character like bobbing his head with this, like he's talking, but there's no voice coming out. And then the person would respond to them and be like, "Yeah, you're totally right. That's exactly what happened," or something like that. And it's like he's clearly saying something. Like the only reason you're just not putting text on the screen. Like just like you're taking it to a crazy level. Just let me hear him talk. But I understand it's really, really important to have your traditions in Dragon Quest. So I understand why they did it.
The traditional side of me says it's fine. But I understand that perspective, especially since the game is so much more narrative heavy. If it was like the earlier Dragon Quest games, I'm gonna be like, well, that's just how it is. The main character is more blank slate in those
Yeah.
games, but not so much in this one. So I can understand the argument. I may, as a traditionalist, I'm like, just keep it silent protagonist. That's the way I like it. But the rational side of me is like, yeah, I can see why people would want the character to talk, and it could potentially make the story better for it.
Yeah.
But Dragon Quest is no the whole core concept of Dragon Quest is being traditional,
Hmm.
so I don't think that'll happen anytime soon.
Yeah. I mean, I could see them going that route, but I do think that given, their main audience is in Japan and they have such a strong foothold there, like I don't see them really breaking away from that anytime soon, which is fine. This game was great without a speaking protagonist, so I don't see why they would go that route.
Yeah, this series is Japan first and West second. Like, we got to make sure our Japanese players are happy, and then we'll make some adjustments for the West. And if they like it, it's a bonus.
Yeah, so it's fine, but it was just an observation.
Mhm.
One thing that did, and this is probably the last negative thing I would say, and it's not really negative, just it seemed odd to me. Maybe it seemed odd to you, but the whole sequence of events when we first get to Octagania with Vents, I thought was very, very strange. So basically, so everyone can remember, sequence of events, you get to Octagania, that's where you find Jade and Rab, and you learn that people are going missing, right? And, there's someone abducting people. And during the course of events, you get to fight with Vince, who's supposed to be like the best fighter in the land or whatever. He wins first place every year, and he's a great, great fighter.
And a
But
very nice person.
a very nice person. Well, you come to find out Vince has been abducting people because he's given these people to this big spider creature, and then the spider creature is giving him like this potion or whatever that he's getting from, I think, the people, and it's making him so strong. And then Vince is winning fights so he can pay to take care of these kids at this orphanage. Well, that's fine and dandy, but I thought there was a couple things I thought was odd. The moment you defeat Vince, like immediately he's just very remorseful. So I thought that was very, very strange that, and they do this a lot of times in JRPGs where you defeat the character and like suddenly they realize they're wrong after you defeat them. But
Yeah,
also,
that is a trope. I've seen that a lot.
but also the fact that, he was like, no, there was no repercussions for him basically being a serial killer, which was very, very odd. The fact that they're like, oh yeah, just go back to the orphanage. And then later he enlists in the fight again, and like you defeat him in 2 hits or whatever, and he's just like, I needed the crowd to see how weak I was, or how much of a fraud I was, because I don't want to be tempted to do this again or something like that. And then he's walking off with his head down, and like the whole crowd starts cheering, Vince, 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 which would be very moving. But I kept wondering, why is this crowd cheering for this guy? He could have abducted your kid, like, or he could have abducted your spouse and fed them to a spider. Like, this guy should be in jail. Like,
Yeah,
why are we cheering for this person?
yeah, they're pretty
Like,
cool with it. I mean, I guess technically no one died.
yeah, I guess, but
I mean,
still,
everyone was stuck in the web, and I guess the spider was just saving them for like a rainy day or something. Because apparently, all of them survived.
yeah, but I feel like that still would have been frowned upon. Like, you could have died, but I thought that was very, very odd. But whatever. Those moments were few and far between. Most of the time, the little segments were really, really well done. So, but every now and again, you'd have something that felt a little odd like that.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing with like Dragon Quest is like there's a story to each place you go to. Like you'll definitely know that in Dragon Quest 7, but for 11 in particular, there is that. And there's some high ones and there's some low ones. And like the low ones are like the ones that don't feel significant, the ones you forget pretty quick. And then you get the ones you really do remember, like the mermaid one and um yeah, going back to the castle where you're born. You do
Yeah,
get it feels like it has like kind of it has an episodic nature to it, of course, but
it would
it
almost be a great.
paces.
It'd be a great anime series. I feel like,
Yeah, but it paces itself so well because
Mhm.
each and everything you do ultimately is still towards your main goal.
Sure.
So, like, it doesn't feel like they're just like doing something random, like completely random. It's like you feel like there's some kind of purpose to it. You're looking for a particular item. Like, you're not just like dragged to the side and like it's like now we're just doing a completely different story. Now we're back on track. It's like no, the flow was great enough that like you still feel like you were getting to the end game.
Yeah, I really appreciated that. Like there was a reason for me to travel the world, so it didn't completely feel like a tangent. And I was able to get established in some of these places. I really enjoyed a lot of these towns. In particular, I think Nautica, which was like the underwater mermaid area, I thought was really cool. Uh, I really enjoyed Sniffleheim, Gallipolis. A lot of these places were so varied and different. One's underwater, one's a desert, one's snowy. There's another one that was by a volcano. Like later, you can go to Havens Above, which is up in the sky. There was such a variety to the locations you can visit, and the fact that the game presented itself to allow you to search for all these items and like really get to experience the world, I think really was one of the strong suits of this game for sure.
Yeah, and I'm quoting this mostly. I want to give credit to the person with this opinion. Super iPatch Wolf, I think was like his name. He did a video recently on his disappointment with Final Fantasy 15 and why he thought the game didn't work well.
Hmm.
And he mentioned in a particular topic, he compared Final Fantasy 15 and Dragon Quest 11 on their world structure, and he was criticizing Final Fantasy 15 as it's like, okay, this is a world where demons live, especially at nighttime, and they come to attack. Yet the world doesn't come off as a place that has things like that. Like you have a gas station with no walls, you have a city that has no barriers or anything like
Yeah.
that. You don't see anyone in like kind of in some armor that's like protecting them against like any demon attacks like that. And you don't see anything like that until like the World of Ruin
Hmm.
portion of the game. And for that, like the world just feels really weird and confusing for it. Now you go to Dragon Quest 11, and the world building on that is so much better. Like you see these kingdoms that have like walls and barricades, and it really comes off as the developers actually took time to ask themselves, how would these people live here? Because there's monsters outside. So
Yeah.
obviously you don't want monsters getting into the town. So like you go to like the desert city,
Hmm.
and there's a whole
Galapagos.
wall barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gallipolis, and there's a whole barricade around.
Hmm.
Like even cobblestone to an extent has.
Yeah, and they
like
have people
gates.
guarding the entrance and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they know monsters are present in this world and they make preparations for it and stuff like that. It's like every town I went to felt believable. It felt like it was a part of the world and something I want to discover and learn about. Like you go to like the Huji area, I forgot the name of it. It's like the more eastern themed one with like the bathhouse and everything.
Hmm.
It's like this feels very eastern when you have other places like Heliodor, which is like very western like.
Hmm.
But somehow they found a way to just make everything blend together so well. Like you can believe that this world has many different cultures and different type of people in it. They did such a good job in the world building on that.
Yeah, it was really really enjoyable. Uh, especially the fact I think for me anyways was that every area kind of had their own little dialect or their I don't want to say dialect but their accents, right? It really added a little nice touch to it. I mean, even if some of the ways they spoke were a little frustrating at first to me. So, for example, the mermaids drove me nuts that they spoke in rhymes because I was just like, it felt like no one would talk like this. But it was kind of endearing after a while. You kind of get lulled into it. Um, but yeah, it was just really well thought out. The only city that kind of like rubbed me the wrong way again was Octagonia because you go down this big cavern of like canyon and you come down these big ridges that you have to practically jump down. And I kept thinking like, how would a horse and carriage get down here to bring grain? But that was the only one. The only one. The rest of them were really well thought out. So
Yeah, and the best part is you learn about these towns, and when you go to like the after the tree falls, it's like the monsters have taken over, and it's like you have to save like each of these towns from the monsters in some way, and it's actually entertaining because you know how these towns are and how they work. So it's interesting seeing what happens when monsters take over, especially Octagania,
mhm.
with the monsters taking over and turning into a casino, which I thought was really funny because you go
Yeah.
into the monster casino. It's funny. I go through it and I get duped. I'm like, why am I so lucky on this? I'm like there's got to be something wrong.
Yeah, you got like 10 luckies in a row or something like that, or 10
Yeah, so
jackpots.
I got the max amount I need to buy everything from the token shop, and it's
Yeah.
like a pair of boxers, a cypress stick, and it's just a bunch of junk. So you're saying to yourself, what's going on here? It's like I'm getting duped. Like this is like a big like the monsters don't know what they're doing. They don't know how
Yeah.
to run a casino. And I'm like, this is so fantastic. It's so wacky and funny.
Hmm.
It's like instead of just like everything being like an overly serious situation, you get some like little laughing points like this. Of course, it gets
That's
serious when you have to fight the boss
yeah.
that's controlling Jade. But like
Hmm.
the concept of that is just so funny.
That's one thing I really did enjoy about this game was the humor. Between the like little scenes with like Rab and him keep dropping his porn magazine, or like Hendrik recognizing the porn magazine, like little scenes like that, like just added a lot to it. But I think the scene that like made me like laugh hysterically was okay. Like when you go back to visit Sylvando's hometown and he brings like his whole brigade of dancing boys and flowers with him, right? And he's talking to his dad for the first time and they're having this big scene and he appeals to his dad's ego and he's like, we really need someone to lead this people and we really need someone to like lead a group of people and like really change the world and like do all this stuff. And his dad's thinking that they're asking him to lead the luminary to defeat, the evil one. And he's like, yes, I'll do it. And this was after a big speech of how you always fulfill your vows. So he's just like, yes, I'll do it. I'll do it. Like I want to change the world or something like that. And Savando's like, good. I'm glad you just agreed to house all these frillicky boys in like flower costumes. And his dad's very like macho and just like not into it at all. And like his dad had to get into like a little like flower costume or whatever or whatever. It was hilarious. Like I was laughing pretty freaking hard in that scene. It was really well done.
Oh
But that's
yeah.
one thing I really like about this game is like there's so much humor you know.
Yeah, especially from Silvando. Silvando is he's just a very wonderful character, just like all around.
Yeah.
It's
So
like he's always there to like just bring some positivity to the group, like even when like things are at their worst.
yeah, well, even like when I would bring him into battle, like I'd be in the final boss battle before I knew I could, use the Sword of Light, and like things would be in a dire situation. He'd be like the only character left, and he'd come out and he'd be like he'd say something stupid like, "You calling me honey? Here I am," or something like that. I'm like, dude, like you're the only one that's left. Like, there's no way you're gonna get through this. And he always had something hilarious to say. So I really enjoyed that character a lot, more so than I thought I was going to.
I don't think there's a single character in the group that I hate or find annoying or dislike. I think everyone is nice and charming in their own way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I was gonna say like at one point, like I thought Eric was a little bland, but he ended up coming around after seeing that stuff with his sister, and then later in the game, I felt like he had a lot of development, which I really appreciated. So I liked everybody for the
Yeah,
most part.
they gave a little time to everyone. Again,
Mm-hmm.
like even Rev, like it's like his story itself is tragic. Also, like his daughter and his son-in-law die,
Mm-hmm.
and like his the entire kingdom he once ruled is just like gone and everything like that. But he's still he's still a high-spirited old man through it all. It's interesting that your grandpa joins your group, but that's like very Dragon Quest fashion. It's like you never know what kind of person you're getting in the group. It's like it's a very colorful cast of characters, which I don't really feel like I've been getting out of Final Fantasy, especially 15. This is like everyone is just like boy band A, boy band member B, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I mean, there's something that I'm not going to fully criticize 15. There's something to like about each of those four characters, but again, it goes back to what I liked about Final Fantasy 9 so much. It was such a colorful cast of characters, and when I say diversity, I don't mean like just like diversity of like how they look. It's like diversity of ideas and character. It's
Mm-hmm.
like someone feels very different and brings something unique to the table. And a lot of JRPGs I feel like don't accomplish that much nowadays. But Dragon Quest 11 was just like a big reminder of how great you can get a cast of characters to be.
Yeah, and I think that's the key to any future RPG is they need to like take note of that, because despite the my occasional issues with the story, or I brought up at the beginning that I felt like the villains weren't really, didn't really have a presence. Like if you have a good cast of characters, like that generally makes up for just about anything, because it's an enjoyable ride. And you see that a lot with Final Fantasy games too. Like some of the best ones, their plot line, total bag of mess. Like totally standing on a stack of cards. Like you pull one thing out, the whole thing's going to topple over. I'm not going to name specific games, but there are games where the plot line is not the best it could be, right? And despite that, because they have a good cast of characters, they have a lot of chemistry, likable, have a lot of colorful dialogue, a lot of great interactions. They make you laugh, they make you cry. Like it makes it a good experience, despite the fact that the plot is just kind of like there, right? It's just a backdrop for the characters. And I'm not saying that Dragon Quest XI's plot was terrible or anything. I enjoyed it, but I think the fact that they had that colorful cast of characters is why this game will resonate with a lot of people. And I I enjoyed that. I think there's a lot of games that have very well thought out plot lines, but at the end of the day, the cast of characters is not as good as in Dragon Quest XI, and it suffers for it. So definitely a highlight for this game.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Like, I can think of Kingdom Hearts in particular. Like, the storyline itself is just like, what in the world is going on?
Mm-hmm.
Type of deal. But the
It's a
thing
perfect
is,
example.
but the thing I understand, especially when people enjoy the game, and myself, of course, is that the characters in the game I think are strong enough to the point that they can make that you can have a cumbersome story like Kingdom Hearts series and still enjoy everything because you like the characters, you like Sora, you like going through uh his his conflict and his story, and you like seeing these characters grow over time into more mature characters dealing
Des-
with more mature matters. I mean,
Despite the fact that the director doesn't even is basically writing the story as he goes.
I mean, for the most part, I don't know if
But
that's
no, I'm
actually
saying
how
that
it does it,
that
but it
yeah,
feels that way.
right. And but like the fact that like these are great characters that everyone enjoys and spends and spending time with, it makes it an enjoyable experience. And at the end of the day, that's what you want when you play a game. You want an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, exactly. And while one section of something may feel weak, the other may be strong enough to, make you forgive the other shortcomings more.
Yeah. So what can I say? It's a really really good game. I would say it's definitely my favorite game that was released in 2018 for sure. Uh,
If I had a ranking system, it would be in the masterpiece category easily, and
of all time.
that's top for me. No, there's a
I would say this generation, it's definitely a highlight for sure.
I have a ranking system in my head that I don't really share with people, but
Okay.
just like I have like the very top, which is legendary, like Zelda Link to the Past is in the
Okay.
legendary status. It's just something that's always going to be good, no
Makes
matter
sense.
what year it is.
Hmm.
And then like there's like Masterpiece where like especially during its time,
Hmm.
it's a game that like just went above and beyond
Right.
what and helped push like a genre forward. And people can argue that like, oh, Dragon Quest XI is so traditional that like it's just going back to the roots. It's not truly doing anything original. And while yes, that's true, but it also reminded people how good JRPGs used to be. And I think something like that might push other developers or people into wanting these traditional type of JRPGs again, which I think what people truly do want. Well, I think more of the hardcore RPG community. They want developers to take what worked and try to modernize more. And that's what Dragon Quest XI did. It took elements of what worked in the past and still created something like a modern feeling RPG out of it.
Yeah. And that's something I can really respect the fact that, that they paid attention enough to do that. And I can't help but wonder if the fact that they made a, they made several versions of this game, right? They have the, um, version of the game that's basically like a Super Nintendo version of this game. And it's supposed to be like verbatim, you press forward on Dragon Quest XI PS4. It's supposed to be the same distance in the Super Nintendo version. I can't help but wonder if the fact that they went back to basics and created a Super Nintendo version of this game, if that kind of translated to the PS4 and made it feel kind of like a nostalgic trip that I think a lot of people like you and me really wanted. I can't. I kind of wish they would do that with Final Fantasy. Just go back, strip it down, make a Super Nintendo version of this game first, make it a good Super Nintendo game, and then try to translate that to a PS4 game. Maybe that's the key to success here.
It's funny you say that because the people who made Zelda Breath of the Wild, they
Mm-hmm.
actually created the map by making an 8-bit version of it. Like the very first Zelda that came out, they
Yeah,
made an 8-bit version of the map of Breath of the Wild, and
there you
they
go.
slowly over time implemented it into the main game.
There's something to say about that. I think just simplifying things and just it allows you to just kind of refine down to like what is the core experience of this game, and then you can kind of build upon that and make things pretty. But I think it helps people. I think it helps them stay focused on like what is this game really supposed to be about.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. Simplicity with depth is how you make a great accessible game.
Yeah. So I don't know. This was a really good game. I imagine it's going to be quite a while before we get to Dragon Quest 12.
I think it's gonna be a while till Japan even gets Dragon Quest 12. Uh,
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect anything like that for like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, so it's going to be a while before we'll see the next one, which is unfortunate. But this was definitely a very, very good game. I'm glad I bought it, and one of these days I'm going to go back through it again. I don't know this. I think I'm kind of tempted to go back through it now, knowing what I know, because I feel like I could go through it a lot quicker. But I
Mm,
just don't. When I say a lot quicker, I think it would still be like an 80-hour experience for me, but which is not very quick at all. But uh,
I like the game enough that I want to play through it again when it comes out on the Switch.
yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now, where I'm like, I like in my mind, I think it would be nice to replay it, but I know that I would not, I don't have enough energy in me to replay the entire game again now. But it's definitely a game that I do want to replay. It's like when I got to, let me put it in perspective. When I got to the end of Xenoblade Chronicles, I thought that was a fantastic game. I thought it was definitely one of the best games that had come out in a long time, but I had no desire to go through the entire game again. Like it was just a very long trek. It had a lot of great moments. It was a great, great RPG, but I just didn't want to go through it again. It was a very long game. I felt like it was stretched out for no reason at times, and it like very cumbersome at times that it didn't need to be. We have a whole discussion on that if you're interested in that discussion. But with this game, I spent even more time with this game than I did Xenoblade Chronicles, and the fact that I still think about like, oh, it'd be nice to go through this game again in the future, I think really shows a lot to how well it was made.
Yeah, yeah, very much. And like Xenoblade, I played through twice. I played
You're
it on the
crazy.
Wii, and then I played on the 3DS.
Yeah, you're
So I
crazy.
played I played two different versions. But
Crazy.
yeah. I mean, there's definitely games where like I'm glad I played through them and I enjoyed them very much, but it's like it's gonna be years until I feel like playing through that again.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many for at least for me there's other things in the horizon that I want to play before jumping back in, but this would be a nice trip. I think especially on Nintendo Switch, I think this would be perfect. Uh Real quick before we top this off, it occurred to me I was going to bring this up. I forgot, but the art style for this game was really different. Like I don't know how to describe it, but I'm pretty sure everyone that's listening to this knows what I'm talking about. But you sometimes see games like this where they go for this hyper realistic look, but then they also go for a cell shaded look. But usually it's like a very big contrast, right? Where like the character model will be like high def or whatever, but then like the grass will be cell shaded. This game was like a very even blend. It's very odd to like describe, but you'd have a very realistic looking rock with a very pixelated outline, or like a character model like their like Hendrick's tunic would be extremely realistic, like the texture, but then you would get to his hair and it would be like super cell shaded. But like it actually worked. It was really interesting the way they are able to make it like all mesh together, and I think it really really made a lot of these areas and locales really pop out and stand out to me.
Kira Toriyama is truly one of the best. Now, I do hope we get to a day where we can maybe Dragon Quest 12 might be able to accomplish this with like PS5 or whatever it's going to be on. You never know what device the next Dragon Quest game is going to be on.
Yeah.
But I really hope that they are able to transition like the concept art or like the promotional art into the game fully one day. But in terms of 3D graphic models, they still translated this game to the artwork to that just beautifully. I mean, the characters look like they just do in the promotional art. It's and like everything just feels like it blends together and like nothing feels out of place. Like like you mentioned, like there's like realistic armor on the simple looking character sometimes, but like you said, they just found a way to make it work and make it and doesn't nothing feels uncanny.
Yeah, and it's very interesting they're able to make that work, because nowadays you very rarely do you see something that's like unique or new, and I this kind of felt like it felt in that realm where I'm like, I quite haven't seen it done this way. I've seen something that's in this general vicinity, but not quite like this. So I really liked it, and I think it's going to be interesting to see it on Switch to see how it pops out, because you know I think there's parts of this game that I'm gonna be surprised if it looks as good on the Switch, to be frank. But we'll have to see.
Well, they pretty much have to go off for the most part a different engine for the Switch.
Yeah.
So there might be some differences, better or worse. So it all depends, but we'll see when it comes out. Chances are it may not look as good, but I mean, you still get a portable experience with it, the 3D version.
Well, and not to mention, Nintendo has been requiring games that are ported to their system to have something additional that's not available on other consoles. And you've even seen this with the Dark Souls, like they added a little bit of extra stuff. So I kind of wonder if they're going to do the same thing for Dragon Quest, or if they'll just say, okay, you're Dragon Quest. We think it's better if you're on here. It'd be good for sales in Japan. But it'll be interesting to see if they have something slightly additional to add to that version.
Just throw a Nintendo Switch t-shirt in there and you're good.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
You can really do something as small as that, and Nintendo will approve it.
Especially for a game like Dragon Quest. I mean, if it, some of the indie games, like they make them build like a whole new dungeon or something like that. But I'm sure for a very established game like Dragon Quest, they'll prove it with just something minimal like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that was a pretty good discussion for Dragon Quest XI. I mean, the only thing we didn't really talk about was the music, which we talked about in the previous episode. The previous episode. So if y'all want to hear our thoughts on that, we thought it was great. We thought it was odd, no orchestra, but we went into kind of the details regarding that. So, but other than that, I think we pretty thoroughly covered this game. I know someone asked some of our favorite plot twists, but we kind of talked about quite a few plot twists, I feel like, throughout this discussion. So, yeah, I can't think of anything else to talk about. Can you?
No, not really. I think we're good.
Cool. So next week is going to be Christmas time, and we were talking about it, and we were thinking about having this episode split in two, but we're just going to have this episode as one long episode, and then next week we're not going to be around to do a podcast, so y'all just have to make do on the holidays without us, and then we'll come back next week. So we'll see you all, I guess it'll be 2019 by the time you all see us again, just about. Which is crazy. It seems like that's such a long time away, but it's what it is. Yep. I'll see y'all when we see you. Take it easy, guys.
Merry Christmas.
Yep.